Today, we're going to break down a really sharp critique of national leadership. It all centers on one very powerful accusation, so let's dive right in and see how the argument gets built.
So this is it. This is the central claim from our source material made by one Nation Leader Pauline Hanson. It's a blunt, incredibly direct statement, and it really sets the stage for a much bigger argument about where the country is headed.
So how do you even begin to back up a claim that strong? Well, that's what we're here to unpack. We're going to break down the key points of the argument, starting with the one specific event that kicked this whole critique off.
Okay, so the argument begins with what's presented as a major test of leadership, a prime ministerial address delivered right in the thick of a national fuel crisis.
According to the source, the government built up a ton of anticipation for this thing. We're talking a full 8 hours, setting pretty high expectations for what was being called a major national address.
But here's the thing. After all that waiting, that 8-hour buildup, what they got was just a 3-minute speech. And the source argues that this super brief address gave absolutely no clear plan for Australia's fuel security, leaving people, and I'm quoting here, with everything but nothing.
And this is where the source connects that one moment to a much bigger idea. The argument is that the perceived failure of that speech isn't just a one-off. It's a symptom of a larger problem with leadership.
Okay, so from here, the critique shifts gears. It moves away from the national stage and zooms in on the real-world tangible impacts on the ground, focusing on things like fuel prices and the cost of living.
The argument gets really specific about which communities and industries are, as they describe it, on the front lines, feeling this economic pressure the most.
So the focus here is squarely on rural and regional Australia, the farming sector and the trucking industry. The source really hammers home the immense pressure these groups are under, from skyrocketing costs to just total uncertainty about the future. And these, of course, are all essential parts of the nation's supply chain. This quote is used to try and put a human face on all the economic data. It's meant to shift the conversation from abstract policy to the personal, lived experiences of people dealing with the cost of living crisis, as observed by Hanson.
And here's the domino effect that the source lays out. The fear isn't just about a crisis in rural areas. It's that if farmers can't afford to plant or harvest their crops, that could directly lead to shortages and even higher prices in the cities, which would affect literally everyone.
Now, the argument pulls back and broadens its scope in a big way. It pivots from the immediate crises to a really long-term critique of how Australia has managed its massive natural resources. So this next part of the critique is all built on this one core idea. The source says Australia has this incredible natural wealth, with everything it needs for prosperity right here at home.
But the argument goes, all that potential has been completely mismanaged. The source claims that past government policies and trade deals have basically allowed all this national wealth to, in their words, slip through our fingers.
And to make this point crystal clear, the source draws a really stark comparison. On one hand, you've got Norway, which apparently used its resources to build a huge national wealth fund. And on the other, you have Australia, which it claims is staring down a national debt of nearly $1 trillion. To make that contrast even more powerful, the source throws out this number. It claims that every single citizen in Norway has about $400,000 that belongs to them in that national fund. It's a figure that's meant to highlight a dramatically different outcome.
All right, so with all that criticism on the table, what's the solution being proposed? Well, this final section of the argument lays out a totally different vision for the nation's future.
The alternative path being pushed here is a pretty clear one. Lean into Australia's fossil fuel resources. The vision is to use them as an engine to rebuild domestic industries, manufacturing, and small businesses from the ground up.
So this really sets up a direct ideological battle. This pro-fossil fuel vision is positioned as the polar opposite of what the source describes as the goal of labor in the Greens, which is to, quote, shut down gas in this nation.
And this is where the critique comes full circle, tying everything right back to that initial theme of leadership. The source argues that this alternative vision isn't being pursued simply because the right kind of leadership across both major parties just isn't there.
So when you boil it all down, the key takeaway is this. The argument being presented here isn't just about a fuel crisis or one bad speech. It's a call for a complete, fundamental change in national strategy, and it's all rooted in a deep disagreement over the country's economic and energy future.
And all of that leaves us with this final big question to think about. In times of serious economic pressure and uncertainty, what qualities and what actions actually define effective leadership?